Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, May 1st. First on our agenda is a presentation, Marion Public Library, Don Klein and Madeline Jarvis. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much. My name is Dawn Klein. I'm the Community Outreach Services Coordinator at the Marion Library.
And I'm Madeline Jarvis. I coordinate Adult and Information Services.
Thank you so much for the opportunity for us to share a little of what's going on at the library for our older adult community.
We have weekly programs, special programs, community partnerships, and a really exciting big announcement to share with the team here. So for our weekly programs, every Monday morning we have something kind of designed for that older adult community. This ranges from Monday morning movies, classics, coffee, and donuts for classic movies for all. This is such a successful program that we've actually outgrown our designated space and have moved to a larger meeting room. And this program is sponsored by Humana. Card Sharks is an open space for anyone to come play a hand or two and to socialize. Timeless Trivia is an opportunity for patrons to test their memory through film clips, historic photos, and commentary. And with Craft Connections, folks can come chat, craft, and connect. The community is welcome to bring their own project to work on or try their hand at the craft of the month. And for all of these programs, we see singles, couples, as well as day groups coming in to use the space together. It's a really exciting opportunity to see that sense of community that libraries foster. We also have hobby-based communities, such as the knitting group that meets to socialize and work on their handicraft, and genealogists and Scrabble players. We also have special events like presentations and lectures that are sponsored by the Friends of the Marion Public Library, and the Lynn County Master Gardeners do 2 sets of presentations in the fall and spring. We also curate our services for these specific communities through our Radical Hospitality. We've been doing e-reader assistance at Hy-Vee once a month, and actually our model is being adapted across the Metro Library Network for the greater Cedar Rapids community as a whole. Where folks can come in with their e-reader and device questions and really get that one-on-one attention that some of these questions deserve. We own the largest collection of large print books and book club kits within our network as well, and this is something that a lot of the older adults do seek out. We get comments like, we appreciate that they're easy to find, that the staff is friendly, that it's all on one floor, and there's also countless opportunities for folks who just want to come in and socialize. And Dawn has been doing amazing work establishing and fostering community partnerships, and she has some great news to share on that end.
The Friends of the Marion Library are active advocates for the library's mission. They provide generous financial support for programming such as our Homebound Books program. Those who are homebound for any extended length of time can enroll in our Homebound Books program, where we send books or audiobooks through the U.S. mail directly to their homes. And these are what these patrons have chosen or given their interests. And then we have volunteers that go and choose the books for them. So that's a really fun thing that we're doing. Through a group in Marion, a community group called Senior Connections that Nick got us involved with, the new program being introduced into our community next week is called Encore Cafe. Encore Cafe is a partnership with Heritage Agency on Aging, the Aging Services, Marion Public Library, and the Marion Parks and Recreation Department. This program is a one-stop shop for nutrition, health education, and socialization time with friends. In addition to the meals being catered by the Marion Hy-Vee, there will be educational and health-related programming following mealtime. Meals will be served Mondays and Fridays at the Marion Public Library and Wednesdays and Thursdays at Lau Park. Ribbon cutting at both locations next week. Lau Park is Wednesday, May 9th at noon, and Marion Public Library Friday, May 11th at noon. There is also a resource fair at both locations with other agencies in the area that focus on this community. Cholesterol and prediabetes screening will be offered along with some giveaways. Please join us for the scheduled ribbon cuttings. One thing that I do want to make sure that everyone knows is most of the supplies for both of the Encore Cafe sites, most of the supplies were purchased from Marion businesses.
And we're just getting started. This summer, there's going to be opportunities for intergenerational programming with the Summer Meals funded by Horizons for youth in our community and our continued Encore Cafe. We've been working with Horizons for summer meals, free summer meals for youth ages 0 to 18 for multiple years now, and we're really excited for this first chance to expand this model of congregate meals paired with that youth meal. As Encore Cafe grows, we're going to start a program called Fresh Conversations. This is evidence-based programs that are led by community experts to support healthy aging and independence. We'll be discussing current nutrition and health topics, taste low-cost, healthy recipes, and discover new ways to stay healthy, active, and independent. Our senior living center outreaches are being expanded. Dawn does a lot of work with senior living facilities here in Marion, working with the programmers as well as doing mobile card sign-ups and bringing mobile collections to those communities. And Dawn and I are going to be sharing the work that we've been doing with our older adult community to our peer base at the Iowa Library Association Conference in Cedar Rapids this fall.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, or feedback?
I just want to commend you for all your work that you do, because this is just one small segment of our resident population and actually the area that the library serves. You do so much for all groups and all people, and it's just an example of how the library has really become a community center. It is no longer a place that just houses books. It is a place that's active with all sorts of learning and community betterment opportunities, and this is a great example. And a couple years ago, I really wanted to focus on making sure we're serving all segments of our population, and that everybody's benefiting from the prosperity that Marion is experiencing, and that no one feels left behind. And the Senior Connections group has really become an active group, and I appreciate your working with them. And I'm just so excited to see what's going to happen with the Encore Cafe program. It's really going to become a model, I think, for the state, for other cities to follow. You're doing some new and different things, and all the partners who are, including the Parks Department and Heritage Agency, and all the people who are collaborating on this, I think, are to be commended. So I hope everyone will join us for the ribbon cuttings for this program and join in the celebration, and make sure that we have get the word out to all people who are interested in this, and especially seniors in the community who are living independently, who will really benefit from having the access to nutritious meals, and all seniors really, because of the programming that's going to go along with it, and
Right.
really make their life more meaningful, and make them feel engaged and cared for in our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Quick clarification. So the Encore Cafes, is it for the seniors to help them come socialize, or for those more in need?
It's a socialization time. There is a suggested fee for anyone 60 years old or older of $5.
Okay.
Anyone under the age of 60, it's $8
Okay,
for them
Very
to
good.
eat.
got it.
And if someone, we will not turn anyone away. If they cannot afford to pay the $5, we're still going to feed them.
Okay, answers both questions.
Absolutely.
And are we still working on transportation options?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're looking at making sure that there's transportation options for those who don't have easy transportation. So
I have a meeting set up in the next couple of weeks to talk with some people about getting some transportation
yeah.
set up.
And I know there are volunteers that will do that also. So yeah, there's some excitement about it in the community. So
One thing that I do want to share is Tim Getty, through the Heritage Agency, through Kirkwood, he has shared with me that this is the first time that it has ever, they used to call it congregate meals. We're trying to get away from that, because really that's not what we're doing. There's more education stuff based around it as well. But this is the first time it's ever been held in a public library, and this is getting nationwide attention. So we're really setting a great example.
And one thing they shared with us when we were meeting about this in the fall, when they first contacted me, and is that they did their studies and realized that Marion had, I mean, that was like where the biggest need in their service area was in Marion
Yes.
for a program like this, for a meals program, and that their studies showed that it could even support two programs. That's how much of a deficit there was.
Mhm.
And so this is a great start, and I think this will grow from here. So
Thank you.
thank you. Other comments or questions?
If anyone has any questions or comments or wants to give some feedback or just has some questions, you know where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Next up, we have a presentation. Chief McHale.
We got Rhonda here too, but I need to set her up on for you on why Rhonda's talking to you today about call prioritization. Over the past 2 months, the Marion Police Department has been engaged in a very vigorous strategic planning process. I've been here about 18 months now, and as you most are aware, that I've made a lot of changes out there at that PD. From our public listening session to us bringing in Nola Joyce, we have a firm foundation now on what our next strategic plan is going to look like. We have the basis for a mission statement, vision statement, and goals for the department to achieve over the next 5 years. What we're working on now are the subtasks to achieve those goals so we can achieve the vision and the mission of the Marion Police Department. I look forward to presenting that strategic plan to council within the next 2 months for you to review. But for you to understand that strategic plan, I have to take and make a concerted effort to educate you what you're going to see in that strategic plan. If I put call prioritization in a strategic plan and let you see it, what does that mean to you? So what I'm going to do is for the next few months, I'm going to take an opportunity at every working session to take about 10 minutes of your time to educate you on small pieces of the department where we're making change, where we're trying to make improvements. And I think one of the biggest areas where we've made some changes is in the, and I think we know in the PSAP, in the 911 center. Rhonda Kaczynski has been with the department for how many years? 22 years. I made her the lead dispatcher about 5 months ago in the unit. She owns it. She cares for it. She bleeds that facility. It is her lifeblood. I'm proud to have her in that role. She's going to talk to you about what we've done over the past few months with call prioritization, going from hundreds of different call types down to a very few. So that's why Rhonda's here today. Next week, I'll have a sergeant here to talk to you about different topics, and moving forward through the summer, I'm going to bring people in and give you small bites. That way, when I present that strategic plan to you, you're like, what the hell does that mean? It'll make sense to you, and and if you have any questions or things that you want more information on, let me know, and we'll discuss it. So, Rhonda Kaczynski, thank you so much.
I appreciate that approach,
Thank you.
by the way. Thank you.
Fair.
Welcome, Rhonda.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Again, my name's Rhonda Kaczynski. I'm dispatcher at the police department, lead dispatcher, been there 22 years. So, here we go. So basically what Chief requested that we take a look at was our list of call types, ranging from anywhere from a traffic stop to a parking complaint to shots fired call, to a kidnapping, bomb threat, the whole gamut of different types of calls that we could get. We started out with 190 call types. So that gives you kind of a basis on where we start. A call type is an abbreviated code that we use in our computer system that defines a group of similar type of incidences, complaints, crimes that are called in by citizens or by officers. They can be something that's reactive, that's something a citizen calls in, or that's something that is happening at this time. Or again, they can be proactive as a traffic stop or a business check or a community-oriented policing call. The call priorities define how we respond, who will respond, and when we will respond. Prior to April 1st, we had 190 different call types. Wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but then again it was. In the bad aspect, the dispatchers that we were training had to learn all 190 different call types. The small little nuances that differentiated one from the other, and when to use them, when not to use them, what was a better call type, that kind of thing, was not necessarily overly efficient. It relied on the operator to figure out what it was that was being called in or what the officer was calling in, and then again, recoding it after the officer got on scene, talked further to the complainant, figured out that, oh, well, that's definitely not what it was. So we would have to go back in and change those and recode those. A good example of this was a theft call. We had about 9 different kinds of theft calls, whether it was a shoplifting, if it was from a residence, a car, a business, identity theft, stolen vehicle, a bad check, or a scam. The operator answering the phone had to figure out what that was. Basically, it was almost like they had to grill the caller to find out what kind of a call it was. And pretty much the officer is going to do the same thing when they get on scene. So we really want to know, is it happening now? And is it in progress? And is there a potential for any injury with this? Gives us an idea on where we need to go. When we dispatch calls out, basically we give that information to the officers over the radio anyway. So coding it, a theft is a theft. The officer makes that determination on the severity of that theft once they arrive on scene and or make charges. Chief McHale asked us to look at our calls, look at our call management. Are we being efficient? Is there a way that we could reduce our call types by about half? Did we have call types in there that we could educate the public on so that we wouldn't necessarily even need a call type? Is there something that they could solve on their own? A good one for that is our animal calls. We had wild animals, domesticated animals, dead animals, all kinds of animals. By educating the public, by not going to some of those, I have a dog running at large and the officer spending, 45 minutes or better chasing a dog, the citizens, we've said, well, if you can catch it, that's great, give us a call. But in that time frame from when we made that choice to do that, I have seen on social media sites, that the public is really putting forth the effort to take care of a lot of that themselves. They're posting pictures, helping each other out. So that's alleviated a lot of pressure off of the officers for one simple call. Let's see. When we looked at our call types and the number of them, it was apparent that a lot of the calls the call types that we had created had been for statistical purposes. We wanted to track to see how many of a certain type of a call we were having. Unfortunately, we have a computer system that was able to do that, but we were still creating call types to do that also. So we're kind of double doing each other. So we eliminated a lot of that. We're letting the computer do its work, what it's supposed to do. A lot of the call types that we eliminated were also what we call final call types. It's the ending charge or what resulted after the fact. So some of those were, a kidnapping, an open container for alcohol, interference with official acts. Can't have interference to begin with because you need an officer present to do that. So a lot of those we got rid of. With some effort, we cut down our 190 call types down to 64. 9 of those 64 are dedicated to the fire department for their fire calls and rescue calls. We had 10 call types reduced down to 1 for theft. We had 7 call types that we'd reduced down to suspicious activity. 6 were reduced down for assaults. Along with that, we also created the call priority definition, and that includes the dispatch and the response type, how many units were needed or required for a certain type of a call. We implemented a 1 through a 6 category, priority 1 being the most severe, where potential for extreme danger to a human life is and then down to a priority 6 in which there could be a delayed response and the response time that would not detract from the quality of investigation or the service that was provided. Those could be delayed up to a 2-hour time frame. So parking problem. If we can't get an officer out there immediately, in a couple hours, the parking problem is still going to be there, and it won't detract from what we need to do. On For example, for an assault call, we condensed the 6 call types into one. Again, that was assault with injury, a simple assault, domestic assault, child abuse. Again, those generally involve 2 people where there could be a potential for injury, so that we assigned it to a priority 2. Again, not all assaults are going to be occurring at that time. So the operator does have the option to downgrade a priority. If it's not occurring, we have the option to downgrade those. Or if we can tell from a caller that it's going to escalate, we have the option to upgrade a call type also, which upgrades the officer response and how they're going to go and when. Assigning the priorities to the calls became much easier after the implementation of the restructured districts that we did. We are able to utilize the functions in CAD in our computer system that supported the district dispatching calls instead of an officer-based call. So it allowed us to add the priority to each call type with instructions also if it was in progress or not in progress on what to do. Takes out second guessing for the dispatchers, puts it back into, this is procedure-wise, this is what we're going to do. Again, they still have the discretion to upgrade or downgrade as it auto-populates, and it also auto-populates the number of officers that are going to be required to be sent for each of the calls. Again, puts a responsibility back in what we want and not dispatcher discretion on that. We're a month into the changes. There's always going to be some extra tweaks, some call types that we might not be using, some that we might want to add. But at this point, the transition's been very smooth, and the officers are good with it. The operators have been working very well with it. So that's kind of where we're at this point.
Thank you.
Questions or anything?
Thank you. Thanks for everything that you do. Does anyone have questions for Rhonda?
So this cuts down on training, obviously.
Yes. We'll be finding that out in a couple weeks, and yeah, we're looking forward to that part of it.
Yeah.
It'll be a little bit smoother and a little bit more streamlined.
Excellent. Thanks.
Steve has a question. Wait, Steve has a question.
Steve, what do you see for other benefits besides having to only memorize 1/3 as many?
Sure. Toward the end, she started talking about prioritization, and she started talking about how many officers respond, whether a supervisor responds. Next week, we're going to talk about the procedures that I've put in place. I can talk about shift minimums all day long, but what does that mean? Well, the prioritization of the call for service and the personnel that you have to respond is the fundamental for me to move the organization forward. If I ask for personnel and I say, hey, I need to increase my shift minimum, what does that mean? Well, that means that I would want the capacity to handle 2 priority 1 calls in the city of Marion simultaneously. A priority 1 call requires 2 officers to respond, not just 1. You see, so when we start talking about personnel, when we start talking about 1 officer car procedure, we start talking about the safety tactics that our officers are utilizing to keep the citizens safe. It all comes down to call prioritization. If we don't have that system at the front end to dispatch our officers and the protocols of what they can respond to by themselves and what they need 2 persons to respond to or a supervisor to respond to, we're kind of dead in the water before we start. So this was our biggest first step. Sergeant Hartwig will be here next week to talk about what comes with the call prioritization. So did I answer your question, Steve?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for the time.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. On to finance? Sir?
Yeah, Your Honor, number 5 got starred. This is the legislation that's the next step in letting the city participate in the GLD hotel project. Staff's been working on financing through a local financial institution, but we need to, for the development agreement, we need to have this piece put in place and approved before we can proceed with that financing. And this item actually just is setting the public hearing for the 17th. There's really no action other than setting the public hearing, and the actual resolution approving the bonds are going to take place on that date.
Questions? parks.
I just wanted to quick mention under police and fire. I didn't know it was going to be placed under police and fire about the correspondence from Charlie. We are taking care of that and handling that. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
And we've responded to Mr. Knudsen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, but it's probably not for you, Chief.
Okay.
Because I'm seeing these poles popping up in northeast Marion. So I'm curious as to who can explain what they are, what they do, how many are going to be put around the city. Because I've got one near me. My neighbors keep asking me questions about it, and I have no answer, except I'm learning it's a Verizon pole, but I'm not sure exactly what that means.
So a couple years ago, the cellular companies came up with this great idea that they're going to put smaller antennas through the city. So we've been to council twice trying to get a handle on how to approach these. And basically what happens, the cellular companies come in with a smaller antenna, they place it on the poles, and that's what you get. Last year, the Iowa legislature passed a law stating that the cities cannot regulate these, which has been very difficult in trying to move forward and address these, because if you don't address them right, they can become an eyesore real quick.
So they get to put them where they want?
Yes. And so with Verizon, what we're trying to do is work with them. And we're trying to site them in areas that will have the least amount of impact to the residents and to people in general. We're going to review this again, this approach, because now the state law, the state code now regulates what we can charge for rent. And now Verizon here in the last month has come back to city staff and says, we want to renegotiate our agreement with the city, which I would caution the council on doing that, because that current agreement gives the city some leverage. So we're visiting with outside legal onto how to approach this. Verizon has submitted additional sites for installations. Those will be coming to the city council here soon. But before they do, we need to review exactly how to handle these. Now, Marion is the only city that is working with the small cell companies directly. Most cellular companies are working with either private entities or utilities. Now, in other states, they are working directly with other cities. So Amber has been putting stuff together. She has been getting stuff out, on the social media, things like that. But you're right, we're getting a lot of questions about these because we're getting more of these. And so we're going to come with a better idea on how to address
I
these.
think the city attorney has a comment.
Yep.
If it helps in speaking with some of the citizens when they raise this question, they aren't able just to do whatever they want, put it wherever. Just the cities aren't able to regulate it. That doesn't mean it's an unregulated enterprise. There are plenty of federal regulations that are in place. It's just not something, it's something that the state at least has divested the city of the ability to regulate those. And quite honestly, even if the state hadn't done so, given some of the recent federal litigation that's gone on, it'd be questionable how much the cities could regulate it anyway over the federal laws and regulations that are in place. So these really are becoming primarily a federal creature.
But if I look at how many, I'm looking at my neighborhood in northeast Marion, and I can drive just a short distance, and there's 4 that that I'm aware of now. And you permeate the city with that many, I mean, it's not gonna look good.
And that's only one wireless carrier.
Yeah, Verizon's the only one that can use that.
Verizon's the only one. Now, the people that lobbied to get this law changed, AT&T, they're coming too. Sprint's coming. And so this has to be revisited at the state level, I think. And then also, there's some ideas we have. We may have a couple solutions, and that'll be coming to the council. But that's being worked out through outside legal. But there's a couple options for the council to consider, and we're exploring those.
But as of now, they get to decide the location.
To a point. Now,
Fine.
we can restrict it through permitting processes. I believe if it's in a, there's some things that the city can do, but it's limited, very limited.
They can put it, do they have to have some sort of easement or, right, I mean, they just put it anywhere?
If it's in the right of way, no. Now, I got
Public, in the public right of way,
They're all in the
they're
right
able
of
to.
way.
public right of way. So.
Our city right of way, they don't need our permission to
Well-
put it in our city right of way.
There are permit processes that we can put in place to help regulate it.
I mean, that's,
There are things you can do, but we need other people to look at that.
I mean, they have an automatic easement over our public right of way?
To a point. The state law is right here, and we'll have answers.
Okay.
But that being said, we've been running the applications through we just started, we got, I don't know how many did we get in our recent, seven or eight that came through, and we're running them through our subdivision review process or development review process. So we have a much better handle if we're involved in it. So we've asked for all the locations and the maps, and we've asked that they coordinate with all the other utilities in the most recent rounds of those. And it's not like they're saying, we're going to put it right here, and that's final. I mean, they understand that there's things in the right-of-way that they've got to be a little more cognizant of, because you've seen the photos on the ones. But, we've got site triangles and different things like that they're so far going to be responsive to. I mean, we haven't had anybody say, well, we're just going to... When it originally started, we had a company come in and say they wanted to work in the right-of-way permit to put up a 120-foot tower between the curb and the sidewalk on 8th Avenue. And we just said no.
That's another question I have. Is that
and they went away.
Are these substituting for the bigger towers? I mean, just more of these smaller ones, but they're taking away the need to have the larger towers?
You still have those.
Yeah.
I know you still have them, but do you need fewer of them because they have these smaller ones?
Correct.
Okay. Renee has a question.
And maybe this is for Lon, but when does home rule come into play, right? I mean, shouldn't we be controlling this?
This is an interesting one because part of the argument for why cities shouldn't be able to regulate it is exactly what Ryan was talking about, that there was a feeling that federal regulations trumped ours. So home rule would apply when you're dealing with states. To be perfectly honest, some of the recent incursions into home rule make me wonder how far the state is going to push before cities push back, because I would submit that some of the actions that they have taken are in conflict with the Home Rule Amendment to the Iowa Constitution.
I would agree. All right, let's push.
Okay. Was that it, Chief? You just wanted to let us know you're handling this
Yes.
request? This correspondence? Okay. Yeah, I know. We kind of went deeper into conversation, but I think you just wanted us to know that you're dealing with that correspondence. Okay, good.
Correct.
All right, on to parks, Mike.
Good afternoon. I had highlighted number 4 under parks on the agenda today. This is just a receive and file letter from the HOA at residents of the park off of Seamark Court. Back at the time that this area was being developed, there was a sewer line that was being put down over the hill and across Legion Park, and we were going to provide an easement area across for the sewer. Talking to the developer, we also talked about maybe doing an overlayer of a trail easement associated with that. And this was before the area was developed. The grades that exist today are very, very steep. That ground that was the developer has been transferred over to the Homeowners Association. I received the same letter that the City Council was receiving and filing also. In discussion with them, wanted us to look at whether we would consider lifting that trail easement if we were not going to develop the trail in that area. I have forwarded that letter on to the Bicycle Pedestrian and Advisory Committee to review that also. And we will bring back a recommendation to the City Council at a future date after we do our due diligence on that, whether there's even the possibility of ever doing a trail.
Okay. Questions on that?
No.
Thank you, Mike. On the building inspection.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here today. We're going to talk about E2 through 7. They're all kind of related. First of all, a little history. We're going to ask for a public hearing on this. It's the adoption of the building, plumbing, mechanical, property maintenance, housing, and nuisance codes. So what we're doing is we're updating all of our codes to the current national codes. The national recognized construction codes are the International Code Council is what we're using. They're updated every 3 years, and then they publish them. And right after they get published, then they start all over again, and they do all their adoptions and code reviews and amendments and everything. So the way we do this is after they're published, and we sit down with them, and our staff goes through them. There's like 10 code books and over 3,300 pages that we kind of look through to see what we need to change and what we don't need to change. Then after we've looked at them, then they've gone on. We go to our local jurisdictions like Cedar Rapids and Hiawatha, Lynn County and Robbins, and we all sit down together and we kind of go through the codes and make sure that we try and get as close to being on the same page as possible. And obviously that never happens, but we sometimes come to agreement on a few items, so that's always good. Then once we've sat down with the other jurisdictions and we kind of came to a consensus, and we never do completely come to a consensus, but we decide what we think is good for Marion. And then we take that to our construction code board, and then they review them, and we get their approval, which we've gotten their approval on these sets of codes. So in front of you, what we've submitted is the proposed ordinances. They're consistent nationally recognized standards is what they are. And then we've recognized local concerns. We've taken what we think is good for Marion and what we thought, in the past and what we hear from contractors and everybody, and try and work that all together. Then we try and maintain a high degree of safety in our community. That's one of the things that we always pride ourselves in. And then we don't want to add burdens to the citizens. We don't want to add burdens to the construction industry. We don't want to be trying to raise the prices of construction. We want to try and keep it fairly level. But we also want to raise the safety in Marion as we go along. But one of the things I always like to say is that if our building department, if we do our job, then the fire department doesn't have to do theirs. So if we've looked at our codes and we have done our inspections, we've done everything we need to do, then that kind of helps the fire department so they don't have to go out and fight fires. They have enough work to do that they, a couple extra fires is, burden to them. So some of the significant changes we've done this time. We've removed some things. We've streamlined our codes. We went from, I forget what it was, 40, almost 50 amendments down to 38, which maybe not seem like a lot, but really when you're coming in from we have architects come from all over the United States and they're designing buildings in Marion. And if they can work in one jurisdiction and then come to Marion and the codes are similar, it makes it easier for them. So if we can get as few of amendments as we can, that's always a good thing. A couple that we've done is townhouses. The code has never looked at the fire separation between the townhouses. We've always had that added in there. Well, now the code finally has caught up with Marion and has recognized that that's probably a good thing. So they put it into code. So we've taken our amendment out. That's one of the things that we do. We removed the swimming pools stuff out of our amendments. We used to have big, long swimming pool regulations in our amendment. Well, the code book has finally developed their own swimming pool and spa code. So we've taken that out of ours. It's recognized through the adoption of our process. So we don't have to have that in there anymore. There's other things. One instance we found is when we get educated here too, because when the Linmar did their big remodel and addition a few years back, Fire Marshal and I were going through the building, and when they had the ceiling tile and all that out, we could see that there were places that were supposed to be fire separations, that over the years contractors have bored holes in those, and they can't do that. So we had one item that wasn't in the code that we took and put it back into code, that if you have a fire separation, you have to mark it. You have to have it on the wall above the ceiling tile, so if somebody's working up there, they know that is a fire separation. And that was something that was really, really eye-opening when we got to Linmar. That was unbelievable. One of the things that we've added in our occupancies, which are apartments, houses. In our occupancies for apartments, if they're building over 12 units, we are changing the sprinkler system. We're going to go to more of a commercial style, to put it easily, commercial style sprinkler system as opposed to a residential sprinkler system. And the reason for that is that the residential sprinkler system is designed to save lives. The commercial, or the 13 system that they call it, is designed to save not only lives but buildings. And when we get these big, huge buildings, last thing we would like to have is have a fire that takes the building. People are saved, but then there's a huge cost on remodeling and fixing the buildings. So that was one change that we had. And then there was like I said, there was a bunch of changes in the code language that we decided that weren't really pertinent to what we had. So we pulled a bunch of amendments out of there. So we're down to, I think 38 is what it is now in the building code. So any questions?
I have a few.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I noticed this is an update from 2015. Is it every 3 years or so?
Every 3 years, yeah.
Okay.
So actually, the first round of code changes they had in April. They had in April of this year for the 2021 code. So they'll do that twice a year, and then the next 2 years, and then they ratify it and publish it in the third year.
And then I know we have, I think, 4 or 5 specific. The one for nuisance abatement, does anything change for us that would, I don't know, hasten the process of things that have been really hard to get at?
Yeah, no, the only thing we changed in the nuisance was the verbiage of the appeal system, the appeals. We have the housing, the nuisance abatement, and the property maintenance. We had different types of appeal processes. And it was our thought that if we got them all generally the same, it would just be an easier process. So it was just to amend the process of the appeals.
But it's not any longer or shorter, it's just more consistent? Okay.
Yeah.
And then lastly, you mentioned talking to residents and people in the construction field to consult. Did you also work with fire and police on any of these?
Well, not police as much. We have talked to fire. In fact, I was talking to the fire marshal today and wanted to make sure that he didn't have any issues with any of our codes that would conflict with anything of theirs. We want to get, when they adopt their fire code, we want that to mesh with ours. So that was one of the things that we do. Generally, we do it, try and do it at the same time. I know the fire marshal's been really busy, so he hasn't had a chance to look at it. And I think, don't quote me, but I think the board is meeting this month to discuss their adoption. That was kind of the general plan anyway.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I do on item 1 there, your receive and file. Just curious, does it matter if that house has been put up for sale?
I've been told that it's been
put up for sale and it's been purchased already.
They still have to they're tearing the garage down. I think they got a demo permit today or yesterday for the garage demo. And they can repair that house if they want to go, but until it gets to where it passes the code, my understanding is that we don't have to release them from their obligation. Is that right, Lon? Do you know?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, this arose out of a case over in Clinton where fire damaged building, someone just walked away from it, so they put a requirement in place that insurance companies have to have a demolition reserve in the event that the owner tries to do something like that, whether the property changes hands, if it goes into new hands and they elect not to do something with it. So it will be there, I believe, until we have a certification that the property's been brought back up to code.
It'll transfer to the new owner.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks for all your work on that. On to engineering.
You guys switch the...
On.
All right. So the first one that started is going to be a public hearing on Thursday regarding the 2018 sidewalk assessment project. So this is going along 29th Street from 12th to 18th Avenue. There's a picture of it here. We're putting the sidewalk in on the east side of the road. We got one sealed bid from Curtis Contracting that came in at $81,043.83, which is 83.5% of the estimate. There's a late start date of 8/6/18 and 30 working days and $300 per day in liquidated damages. We are recommending award to Curtis Contracting regarding this project.
Questions for Mike on this? That's less than our estimate, was it?
Yeah, it was 83.5%.
Will we just roll that extra over into next year?
I can find out from finance.
We can do more next year.
Yeah, we can't do more? Or?
We're kind of at the block limit. I mean, that little bit, you're not going to get very far.
I see. Okay.
Luckily, they came in low and it wasn't high, and we have to try and cut. That's
Right.
the main thing.
Right.
Okay, good.
Item number 4 is a resolution approving the contract and bond with Tricon General Construction regarding the City of Marion Lyle Park South End improvements. They were the low bid out of the 3, $962,000. And there's an image of what we're talking about. It's the playground, it's the open pavilion, and it's the restrooms. It did come in above the engineer's estimate, 108.3%, but Mike was able to find the money as he explained last time.
Questions? So completion is going to be late fall?
No, we adjusted that construction schedule. Late start now is August, late start date, and then final completion would actually be end of June 2019. We opened that window up because of the late bid dates to try to get more competitive bids for the project.
Sounds good. Number 5?
For 5, I didn't print it off, but it's the 92-page traffic report. You guys got the presentation. That was the joint council meeting. So now it's just actually taking this report and receiving and filing it. I don't know if there's any questions on it. There's more discussion on the next item, but basically the long term in 10 to 20 years, we need to look at either putting a signal or a roundabout in that, but it doesn't meet the warrants for that currently.
Okay.
So there's some near-term recommendations that we'll go through next and discuss.
Let's have those.
Yep. So the near term, the first one that was in their report was installing LED stop signs. Per the research that they had, it does have some safety benefits to it. They would cost about $1,600 each for a total of $6,400. I know Renee asked the police chief if that would have stopped the 2 accidents that did occur in that situation, and his response was no, because those vehicles had already stopped at the stop sign and then proceeded too early. So it was a lack of judgment at the time. So I didn't really get a clear indication during the joint session that either the city council or the school board was in favor of these items, but that's what we're here to talk about now, is if you want to expend money towards these improvements. So I just have them one at a time, and we'll change it to a motion directing staff to proceed with whatever items you guys want to for the Thursday council agenda.
Sorry, say that again.
For Thursday, we will change it to a motion of, say you want item number 1.
So
We'll say motion directing staff to proceed
one
with
at a
item number
time.
1. Yeah, we'll go one at a time.
That's what we were just wondering. Okay.
Yep, so we'll go one at a time, and you guys can kind of give me indication if that's something you want or not.
And none of them are exclusive of the others. I mean,
No.
Okay. It can be one or all, or
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So is there anybody inclined to install LED stop signs?
I don't think so. It didn't sound like in the report that we were given, the presentation we were given, I should say, that it would really affect anything.
They really
doesn't
don't work
lack-
at night, right?
They work at night. The solar panel.
That's
Yeah.
for them to stand out, and they're not gonna help in the daytime, because it's only at night.
A little, it's not very bright.
Right.
It's not like
It's
that
not like
intersection
the
is
police
dark.
vehicle that you can see during the day. I mean, it's the small, so if you've done the Lindale Trail that has the lights around the outside that are the amber. So they're hard to tell during the day, and that's all it really is. It's a small amount of light.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the fact that no one's really pushing for it from our side or the school side is to save the money, since the accidents wouldn't have been helped from that. The one issue I had with that study was, I think that, didn't they only look at traffic one day? Wasn't that?
Yeah, they did a
that's
full.
like,
Yep.
Okay, enough said. I'm good on one.
Yeah, but the school didn't push for anything.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So
That's the
why
point.
throw money at it? Agreed.
Okay, so kind of consensus, no on number 1. Number 2 is install an advanced stop warning sign on the west leg. So the cost for this, if I had to go out and get it quoted, it cost about $500. That's what we paid to put that advanced warning sign in for the 7th Avenue or the east roundabout. Public service, I'm sure, could do it cheaper, but whether you guys want to do that, that's up to you guys.
What's your thoughts? I mean,
I don't think
what's
that's
your recommendation?
That I would not recommend that either.
Yeah.
Do we have one on the east side?
There's none, but they just recommend this one because of site visibility.
Okay, we're coming to that.
Yes.
Got it?
Okay, so any indication, anybody wanting this one? Okay. The next one is trimming the trees. So this is actually what it looks like when you're at the stop bar looking west, so you can see the trees that are in the way causing that site triangle issue. So talking with our city arborist, in the arborist code, city code 15206, depending on if these trees are on city property or on the private property, we can get them trimmed or taken down. If it's found that they're on private property, we can actually have the property owner take them down if that's how we want to move forward. If we find out that they're on city property, it's going to cost somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 to remove 30 to 60 foot of trees. We don't have a firm estimate, which is kind of, we didn't want to stir up the neighbors if we weren't going to go through with it. But this is what we're talking about for that view. I mean, you can see the car stopped at the stop sign, so I mean there is some visibility there, but it obviously would help.
Timmy, I've been, since we've discussed it before, every time I go by there now, I look at that and I notice it. I think even just a few of the trees would make a big difference. You know, even just
30 feet would be good.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't even know if you
I'm in
need
favor
30
of that
feet.
one.
My question is, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but how much further do you need to see down that road? At the stop sign, and there's 4 car lengths that I can see back there. What, I'm going to ask the same question, is what advantage does that give us or give the
I don't know.
person sitting there at that, I mean, do we need to see 5 car lengths
Ask
back?
the experts.
I don't have a problem with people running these stop signs.
What, say that again?
There's
Sorry.
not, I do not perceive a problem that people are running these stop signs. The problem with any accidents that typically are occurring at this intersection are through driver error. You know, I pull out and then the other person pulls out from the stop sign. And so I drive through there 3 times a day.
Yeah.
You know, once to work, once to home, and once to Parlor City. So, you know what I mean? So really, would the trees improve sight lines? Sure, but are removing some of those trees going to increase public safety? No, because I don't think there's a public safety concern right now.
Good point. That's why we have the experts. Mike, is that your thoughts too? Or?
Yep.
Well, let's save a couple thousand and not do it.
Okay. Any comments or thoughts after hearing that?
I'd say leave a sleeping dog lie.
All right.
Okay.
And then the last one is one that is going to happen anyways, but they recommend a continued use of crossing guards, which the school indicated they were not going to stop that. So.
Definitely.
So what I'll do for Thursday is just receive and file the intersection study, and there won't be any motion to direct staff to do anything further.
Everybody okay with that? Everybody concur?
Yeah, the only one I was going to push for is the trees, but because it looks like it could improve visibility, but I mean, they're supposed to be stopping, and so you're going to have a driver error if it's a collision right there. That's the only one I would have been leaning for certain, but.
Yeah.
Something just for up to the school to do, but I remember at Nova, there was a principal that North.
Mr. North.
He was always out there, and that figure, kind of controlled the parents, I think. Maybe if there was someone like that up there, might make a difference.
Okay. Other comments? I think you have your direction. Okay.
All right, F7. So I won't go through the entire TAC report, but basically we had a receive and file. Adrian was in favor of turning Echo Hill and Alburnett Road into a 4-way stop, and then also lowering the speed limit of Alburnett Road. The TAC committee looked at it. The recommendations are twofold. One, leave the intersection as a 2-way stop. Basically, we're stopping east-west traffic. That's the minor as far as the amount of vehicles that are there, and north-south is not stop controlled. In our CIP in 2019, it's proposed to have an intersection improvement project, whether that's signals or a roundabout. So we recommend proceeding with funding that when we get to that portion of the CIP and make those improvements for the intersection and take it away from a 2-way stop to whatever that configuration is as more development occurs in there. The other recommendation is to lower the speed limit for Alburnett Road from 45 to 35 from the city limits to the north to the end of Alburnett Road, which is the bridge where it turns into Central. This would make it consistent throughout the city so that Alburnett Road is 35 throughout. It does 2 things. It makes it easier for enforcement because it's all 35, and then for the 25 when children are present, you're not going from 45 to 25, you're going from 35 to 25, and it's not as an abrupt, I see a kid, I got to slam on the brakes and then cause an accident. So that's our recommendation moving forward is those 2 things, and the next item is actually the first reading on changing the ordinance. So our proposal is to change it from 45 to 35, leaving the 25 miles per hour when children are present as it's signed currently.
Okay. Sounds reasonable to me.
How far north of that intersection is the city limits?
There's basically a subdivision on the west side, and that's where the line is. Right now it goes from 45 right there at that location. So similar to Winslow and Lucor, we'll work with the county to get, speed zone ahead. There it goes from 55 to 35 on those 2 streets, so basically do the same thing here. So we'll have to, right now there's a 45 ahead up there, so we'll just have to get that changed to reduce speed ahead.
Sure.
But since that's in their jurisdiction, we just have to get that sign in there.
So it's 45 headed north coming out of the circle, right? So that'll go down to 35
Yes.
as well?
Yep.
It goes to 35 at the school zone though, doesn't it?
25 when children are present.
And children are
45.
rarely present because that's Albernet Road. Nobody's walking there. I mean, I live over there. I never see kids right on the road, but when school lets out, there are a lot of cars coming out, but there aren't really children present. One thing I wanted to ask was the first bullet of this report talked about Echo Hill and Albernet are minor arterials, but that's based on the 2013 DOT report, right?
No, that's actually how we classify the streets. So we put a
today
hierarchy.
we would still call that a minor arterial.
Yeah, that's how we classify the streets.
Okay.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Oh, please, go ahead.
To go further into when children are present, is that when school's in session or when you actually see kids there?
That's actually when you see kids.
Oh, okay. I always thought, when school was in session that, that you would obey that, but it's when you actually see kids there.
Yeah, so some of the signs like on Boyson and Cedar Rapids, they actually have time frames, and they have it from 7-something to
Yeah, maybe that's
8-something.
what I'm basing it on.
Yeah, and basically it's when the kids are actually out there.
Okay.
Still good to slow down.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay, Randy.
Agree. If that were to change, when would that come about?
Well,
How soon would it be posted?
so we have to do 3 readings, and then it's a matter of public service getting out there and getting it signed.
Dan Whitlow is just to talk about controlling the speed in an environment that had a perception, and obviously that's been it seemed like when you got to that roundabout, you hammered it going north. Obviously, we would want to try to enforce that with do we still have our speed sign trailer?
Yes.
Because I think that's going to be a tough one to patrol for a while. That's going to be just a huge.
And that's why I really wanted the police input, because they're the ones who have to enforce it and being on the edge of the boundary.
Exactly, and that's what I was just going to point. Us making changes and enforcing it are 2 different things. So that stretch right there is going to be a critical component for a while. It's just historically been you were at the edge of the city. So.
Okay.
The question: when
Go ahead.
the new Albernet, is that going to be 35 then also?
It is signed as 35 right now, yeah.
The extension?
The new.
The one that goes through Bowman Meadows.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Number 12?
Item 12, we're actually going to remove. They didn't have the final numbers to us, so we'll just take that one off the agenda.
Okay. 13?
For item number 13, we'll have a public hearing on Thursday regarding an electrical line easement with Interstate Power and Light, or Line Energy. This is for the Central Corridor project. Up on the monitor, you can see they're asking for a 12-by-12 easement to place a transformer. Since we're going from overhead to underground, they need to have a location to put that transformer that was previously on a light pole that is no longer going to be there.
Absolutely. Anytime we can put them underground.
And then F14 is then approving the electrical line easement. Because we are giving up city property, we have to have a public hearing before that.
On the next item, I'm turning over the gavel to Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. 15.
So item F15 is an approving contract and bond with the Bode Construction regarding the 2018 storm sewer project. On April 19th, we awarded a contract to Bode Construction. Before that, they were one of 10 bids that we received. They were the low bid. They were 91.4% of the engineer's estimate. Then a picture of the improvements are shown there. Basically, we're starting at First Avenue, coming up the east and west side of 27th Street. One side with storm sewer, one with drain tile, and getting to the north side of 2nd Avenue. And eventually that'll be extended up to 3rd Avenue if we're going to reconstruct 3rd Avenue. We are recommending approval of the contract and bond.
Can you describe this area again? Where is this?
Yep, so it's turned sideways. North is actually to the right. So First Avenue is at the left side, and 2nd Avenue is on the right side, and it's going up 27th Street.
So this is not Lau Park
No.
Okay, that's, I think, what we were confused.
Do you see
Did you
that on
see
your
that?
screen?
It says Lau
We were
Park
like,
South
wow,
Entrance
Park,
Improvements.
South End, I live over there.
Sorry, I threw these together today.
Strike one.
All right, any discussion or questions? 15?
And that wouldn't be the signs that I saw. Hasn't started yet.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Back
I
to,
did
Mayor.
have 17 and 18 were added in there. I don't know if you guys had any questions about those as well. They weren't starred, but if there's questions regarding the airport. The airport committee concurred with that, so.
I didn't know if before we got started, I know Mr. Robson is in the audience, and he had an item on the agenda at the previous meeting, and I know it was mentioned by a council person, Jensen, that there was a desire to potentially bring that back. There were, as you recall, there were 2 items on the last city council agenda for there were actually resolutions to support a rezoning, so the resolutions were actually for comp plan amendments. And when those 2 items were voted down, we had held the public hearing on the rezoning. The comp plan amendments had been voted down, so the ordinance regarding the rezonings could not be read. So, as the council has probably heard in the past, if there is a desire or for one of those that council persons that was not here, or if someone voting on the prevailing side of that would change their vote and ask that that motion be brought back for reconsideration, it can be placed on the agenda. That would have to happen on Thursday. And since Councilman Jensen had asked me about this, I was just bringing it up. If there's desire to do that, we would place it on the agenda for Thursday. And I didn't know if there was any further questions, but.
Yeah, so at this point, I am asking to put resolution number 26821 related to the comprehensive development plan and future land use map for Robson Homes back on the agenda for consideration on Thursday.
I would like to hear from legal if that is permissible with an absence, and if that absence does show a no vote. I know that's been a topic of discussion in the past.
What number is this?
It's not.
Oh, no wonder.
Good evening. Well, it's funny that you say that because we discussed this. We even brought Don Hoskins out of retirement to discuss it with him. His exact words were, an absence is a no vote. I don't care what Paul Draper says. The procedure for it is actually Councilmember Jensen has initiated it by a motion for reconsideration. The motion to reconsider does need to be raised by somebody who voted with the prevailing side. In this case, it's the noes. An absent vote counts as a no vote. It does need to be seconded, the reconsideration does, and that second can be by anybody. So the second can be by somebody that voted with the yeses and lost. But the initial motion needed to be by one of the people counted as a no vote. Regardless of whether or not the actual vote itself requires a supermajority to pass, it just requires a majority vote on the motion to reconsider to get it back on the ballot. Now, a lot of the things that I'm quoting here are actually out of Robert's Rules of Order, which the City of Marion has not formally adopted. So I'm just using this as a guide and also historically what the city has done. But so if we have the motion to reconsider is on the floor, and to be specific, that is a motion. The 2 different resolutions that failed were resolution number 26821, which was the resolution approving an amendment to the future land use map of the Marion Comprehensive Plan from single-family detached to single-family attached for property located north of Winchester Drive and west of Sherwood Drive. This is the Robson Home matter.
Is that the one right off 29th, right? Am I thinking
Yes.
of that right? Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then the other one that also failed was resolution number 26822, approving an amendment to the future land use map of the Marion Comprehensive Plan from single-family detached to single-family attached for property located southwest of 35th Street, north of Tower Terrace Road, and southeast of Indian Creek Road. That was the Morris Wood Ventures, I believe. So specifically, I believe if there's going to be reconsideration on each of those items, separate motions to reconsider for each one would need to be made since they were separate resolutions. And then with a second, and if there's a majority vote to reconsider it, have it put back on Thursday, they would need to be back on the agenda on Thursday exactly as they appeared on the previous vote where they failed. Also, anybody who voted no or was absent needs to be given notice of those. Now, generally, that's not a problem with Marion. You have your council packets. Everyone, as I understand it, generally receives those with adequate time to know what's up on the agenda, so they would have notice that this is back up on the agenda even there is a no vote. So that's the procedure to follow for that. Any other questions on that?
So Steve could make the motion tonight, have it seconded, and it would be on Thursday, or Steve would make the motion Thursday for a 2-week from now meeting?
Okay,
What's
so
the timing?
It's not entirely clear, again, because we haven't adopted this.
Okay.
I would say probably proper form or best form would be to make the motion to reconsider on Thursday.
Right.
And have the item on the agenda Thursday on the assumption that the reconsideration vote is going to pass. That would at least get it back up for reconsideration. Now, obviously, if the reconsideration vote fails, then the item itself won't be reconsidered and it would just drop off the agenda. But I would recommend placing both items, both the motion to reconsider and then right after the reconsideration, having the item, the resolutions, back on the agenda right after the reconsideration.
What about, in fairness to all the people who came? That doesn't provide notice, right?
Well, and that's why by putting those on the agenda, that's a published agenda. So as long as it's on the agenda, I guess, I'm not sure the time frames for our publications because I don't handle that piece of it. If, would there be time for that to be published? Do we already have the posted agenda for Thursday, or is that going out?
No, it'll go out on Wednesday afternoon. But normally what we have done with these in the past is you'd have, since Robert's Rules of Order doesn't really contemplate separate work sessions and then formal sessions. It's really written around every meeting being a meeting where you can take actions and make motions and pass resolutions. And so in the past what we've done is the motion to reconsider would be made on Thursday and the motion to reconsider would pass, and then we would typically place them on the next following agenda. So it wouldn't be both actions taking place on Thursday.
That's been my understanding.
You could do that certainly as well.
Well,
I just would not do the motion to reconsider tonight, because since this is a work session and not a regular meeting.
I just wanted to let them know that I was going to be bringing that up on Thursday.
Sure.
I think that's what Tom and I have had a discussion about.
Okay. Then I would definitely have the reconsideration, at least the motions to reconsider, assuming, and I don't know, Councilmember Jensen, which exactly ones, if you're requesting both, but whichever ones are coming up, that those be on the agenda for
I'll do that on Thursday.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarity. I would just ask this council to, I don't know if we're all in agreement, and I think it's fine if you want to bring it up and we have another vote, but that we do allow time for people to be noticed, because a lot of people came out in particular for one of them, and I wouldn't want them to think.
Well, that'll give them 2 weeks.
Right, and I think that's
and
perfect.
I think I do too.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else on this? Anyone?
I have a question.
Sure, Will.
So, and this may or may not happen, and who knows, but what if, again, there's 2 people absent, at the next meeting when we do it again, can it be brought back up by a person that wasn't, I mean, how many times can you redo that?
Sounds like in perpetuity, as long as you, no?
Just once?
Well, again, Robert's rules, you get one additional crack at it.
Okay.
And I would say that I would assume that that's been historical practice. So, I would fall on the side of no, you cannot continue to keep bringing it up.
Okay.
Okay,
Good question.
thank you. Okay, relinquish
used
the
very
gavel
often.
back to Mayor Abalosly.
We're at number 3.
I don't know.
No idea.
I just wanted to provide the council with a little, just kind of update on what we'd like to proceed with, and there's no contract or anything being provided, but this is a map of the uptown area, the green area being the park, the mall, the library, city hall, and then the block between. These orange lines are the alleyways. Some have question marks, some don't. They're remnant pieces, lots that have been split, not original lots. So you may own lot 1 of original block 28 plus 20 feet of the east. So what we'd like to do is proceed with ensuring that all the alleys have been vacated. So that means if there hasn't been any alleys vacated, we'd put them on the agenda for vacation. Or if we can't find, some of these records go back over 100 years, just so that if any of these processes proceed, that we're assured that they've been vacated, and then we do some survey work to ensure that, like the block that we're sitting on we're one lot and not a number of different lots, or we want to abstract and just kind of get the properties, I guess, in line. Want to abstract, clean them up a little bit. There was a portion of the mall site back when it was developed that was built over a property line, and so there's like 6 feet into the right-of-way of 11th Street that's owned, and so we'd probably want to clean up some of that in the future. We won't be platting that lot. That would be the owner's responsibility with the project, but just so the council's aware of kind of what we're moving towards and would like to do. Just trying to clean up the legal boundaries and get some more formalized process through that. So any questions?
This includes all that you have in orange there?
No, it would just be, we want to make sure all the alleys have been vacated on block 29, and then, or I can't read that number, but 28, 29, and 30 are the blocks that the city will ultimately own. We want to make sure that all those alleys have been vacated. And
just those blocks?
Yep.
19?
Yeah.
And
So
19?
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, 19, 28, 29, and 30, we want to vacate all the alleys, and then we'll probably do some survey work in 28, 29, and 30. So, any questions? Just so you guys are kind of aware of what's going on. Item number 4, on Thursday, there'll be a public hearing regarding the preliminary and final site development plan for Squaw Creek Hospitality Country Inn and Suites out at 151 and 13. I think you guys have seen the project numerous times. There was a lengthy staff report. It had the elevations in it. Didn't know if there was any specific questions. On Thursday, I would probably do a little briefing on the elevations and just talk a little bit about the project. I don't have to go through that tonight unless you guys want me to, but there was a pretty good staff report on it. Questions on that?
Come on. Okay.
And then number 8, we'll be setting a public hearing for the annexation request regarding Genesis Equity Land Holding.
Tom, 1 second. I'm going to turn over the gavel to Mayor
I'm
Pro Tem
sorry.
on this.
Hang on one quick
Next couple.
second. Do you
No,
want
you're
my-
fine,
Are
you're
you sure, Will?
Yes, it'll work eventually. It's just
Okay.
being an iPad.
That's all right. Okay, thanks. Okay, Tom, ready for number 8, please.
Sorry, the next item is just we're setting the date for a public hearing regarding the annexation of property out east of the airport. And again, we had quite a lengthy staff report on that, so I can, for some reason, I'm not showing my papers got out of order, excuse me. Well, it's the property east of the airport. You guys have any questions? I know there was quite a bit of information provided as part of the packet. We'll be going through it in great detail at the June 7th meeting regarding the entirety. As you're probably aware and seen in the receive and file at the beginning of the agenda, there's also a rezoning request on preliminary plat coming through to support some industrial and commercial development out near the airport. So we'll be expanding industrial and commercial activities in the vicinity. Here's a good layout that kind of shows. So ultimately, it would include the annexation of this area that's highlighted in the red. So,
Tom, why would we be interested in annexing this right now? What's in it for the city?
I'm sorry. What's the reason?
Yeah.
So there's there's a development proposal for some property in this vicinity here. There's a volleyball court.
Is that on the south side, though, or is that on the north side?
It's on the north side. It's actually already annexed. But
that one is, correct?
Yeah, there's a small sliver of it that would be in the county as they're proposing. And ultimately, they'd want to, plat that lot. So the idea was to bring in what the remaining property they had out there. Plus, it does open up quite a bit of property for future industrial development.
Is that something really within our scope right now? Concerned about extending out further benefits and purposes. Is that just really something we need to be entertaining right now as a city?
Well, it's certainly within our comp plan, identified as in our comp plan. There's serviceability will be something that we look at as we proceed through it and provide information to the council on that. But it's certainly serviceable. It does require the extension of some utilities across the runway into the property. But I believe it's all gravity fed at this point.
But the annexation doesn't necessarily make any commitment on behalf of the city for when the services are going to be provided.
Correct.
That's all future getting platted.
And we'll do a little more analysis before then and be able to provide some information on serviceability and services to the site. So. And that's showing all C3. I believe that there's been a change that essentially this ground south is going to go to an industrial zoning district classification.
Which essentially would need all services, correct?
Oh yeah. Any of the proposals would require full service. Yeah.
I can answer some of those questions.
Okay, thank you though.
All I have.
Wow, okay, thanks, Tom. Right. Oh, okay, so moving on to admin. Number 1.
Okay. The first one is a motion to receive and file an application for tax increment financing. As the council may remember, whenever we receive these, the council receives and files it so you can see the application, see what the project is, and then those get referred over to the economic development team for review and potential award. We had extended an invitation to Integrity to be able to attend in case there were questions on the project. I wasn't notified that they didn't have somebody available, but I don't know if anybody else had heard from them that they were not going to be able to attend. We'll let them know, just in case they didn't, that they could potentially come and present on Thursday as well. But what they're looking at is a contractor condo development out there adjacent to one that they have already completed. The economic development team has seen it already and has conducted some preliminary reviews, but would make a formal recommendation to the council at a future date if the committee feels that it fits within the economic development policy.
Is this on their side? I know where all their buildings are. Is the land they're talking about on the site just to the south of their existing buildings where they've already done some earthwork?
I thought it was to the north.
Is it to the north? Oh, okay.
Is it? Okay, this is the south.
It is to the south.
Yeah.
And they've already been moving some dirt out there? Okay.
Yep.
That's the only area I thought was available around them.
So, Lon, you're saying we've received this and we're just receiving a file. Y'all haven't met
We have met, and he came in to present to the economic development team, but we have not yet had our discussion on everything that would potentially be eligible. I will say that with these types of projects, one of the things that the economic development team is discussing is we do not want it to become an entitlement for any project that comes through the door to come in and say, well, you did it on this other similar project or something like that. The idea is that if there is a market gap that or there's a complication in the market, like brownfields are a complication for redeveloping property, typically there has to be a hook. Now, if they're proposing something that is in excess of code requirements, as we've discussed before, like putting sprinklers in a building where it wouldn't be required, there's a clear, legitimate public purpose behind the city providing assistance. So some of those things we consider automatic qualifiers. Beyond that, we take a look at the pro forma that's presented to see if it works.
Well, firstly, I appreciate getting this. I really just glanced over it, and obviously I'm very curious to hear what y'all have to say, but I was wondering why this was coming forward because it just didn't seem to fit it. But again, I'm open-minded about it, and I'm glad that we at least have the foreknowledge. So if y'all don't see fit to recommend any TIF for this, we just wouldn't hear about it again, or would you at least tell us it didn't pass muster?
Oh, the recommendation would come to council to not provide an award.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. And so number 2, they're not here.
Right.
Okay. So.
And then number 4 is actually it's a resolution adopting an updated development agreement with GLD Commercial for the hotel project. The only change between this one and the existing development agreement is the amount. Early on, they had identified that the costs for the hotel were going to come in at higher than the initial estimates, and the city's agreement was to fund 36% of construction costs. So we're not funding furnishings and fixtures or anything like that. We would be contributing based off of invoices that would be submitted to the financial institution up to a maximum of $4.5 million. Per the urban renewal plan amendment that the city has already adopted, we have actual spending authority to go up to 5, but the amount for the request and the amount we're recommending is to go to 4.5 on this.
Any questions?
Right.
Okay.
Number 5, we had briefed the council on this a little bit before. The city had provided some financial assistance to help match a workforce housing program on the first phase of Sunny Ridge on the eastern edge of Marion. And the way the calculations worked when the program was brought forward, they actually ended up receiving more than we initially anticipated. So our intent was not to award anything to the second piece of the project. However, when we met with the developer, what we found out is they actually have 2 completely separate workforce housing awards. So the city does actually have to take action on the second parcel in order for them to get the workforce housing grant and to do phase 2. And so at this point, we are looking at a 1-year tax exemption on the property to make sure that we meet the minimum state match requirements. It likely will be actually a little bit more than that, but we want to ensure that they have enough to meet the requirements of that program.
I'm relinquishing the gavel back to Mayor Abou-Osley. Do they know this is going to be on for Thursday, or have you communicated this outcome?
Yeah, they were aware of it. They brought in the signed waiver that we needed in order to be able to move forward without having to do a statutory waiting period. So this will be a specific urban revitalization for just this parcel, for this site. And I know the question had come up before.
For this phase.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and I know the question had come up before is whether the city would contemplate doing more of these. With the expiration of our eligibility for doing this in other areas of the community, unless someone already had a workforce housing award, we don't have the ability to do it outside of what I would consider to be typical uptown or downtown areas.
Okay.
Number 6 was added to the agenda, and this is actually one that is related to a workforce housing application that was already submitted. They had an award, reapplied, and the state has indicated that they need a resolution from the state that that earlier resolution that we passed in 2015 to provide match is still in effect. Any questions on that one? Number 7, I wanted to talk about this one in a little bit more detail because we are recommending some changes to the early retirement program. The early retirement program has typically been set up so that an employee who elected into the program could get a lump sum buyout equal to 2% of salary up to 25 years of service, along with 2 years worth of health insurance expenses. One of the things that our HR manager has done is to actually done an analysis of the demographics of our workforce, and her recommendation is that we actually look at adding more time to the length that the potential retirees would be eligible for health insurance. She calculated it out that doing that actually ultimately ends up increasing our savings by about $46,000 more per year. What we found is that I think it's probably not unusual to see this with employers, but we kind of have cohorts of employees moving through where a lot of employees may have been hired at the same time. And the earlier out they retire, the more the savings compounds. And so after this group, we have a period where we won't really have another cohort coming through for several years. So rather than offering the program as an annual thing or every other year, she was recommending that we offer it once as an enhanced benefit and then not offer it for as much as 3 years in a row. So there'd be a period there where that people really do have to choose, do you want to do this or not? Because this is your shot at doing it. If you do not do this, we would not offer it then for 3 more years.
So if we offer this to somebody and they accept, these are positions that we're going to replace.
Right.
I would be really interested to see the calculation and the analysis, because I've seen companies do this in the past, and I've always been very curious to see how this justifies itself. I always have a difficult time understanding it, so if I can see some numbers, that would certainly help me.
Yeah, I would agree with Steve, only because I had circled this, 48 months of health insurance, and then you're bringing on new employees and providing health insurance. I'd like to see those. Just the savings, because it says that if everyone does it, we save almost $186,000. That's
over 4 years.
Yeah.
Or 3. Is health insurance? Do I understand that we would pay 100% of the health insurance? That they don't pay? Do they pay anything?
They pay the amount that they paid towards their employee contribution at the time that they retired.
Okay, so that continues.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can provide those calculations. Now, we cannot tie it to, you can't see who it is.
No,
but we can
That's
provide
fine.
the general calculations.
That can be redacted.
Yep.
But so it says if the first bullet under benefit to the city says if all eligible employees, but even if there's a fraction, you're saying there's a benefit. It's just if everyone did it, this is X is the amount of savings. But
yeah, we just consolidated it together again, because if we were to provide the individual ones, you'd be able to say, okay, I know there's only one person in this list that makes this much. I can identify who that is,
sure.
And then you'd be able to figure out, are they on family or single health insurance, and that kind of information is protected.
Yep.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, I am interested in the numbers, but I will say we did this several times on the school board and offering the early retirement. I mean, people sometimes you'd have to have a waiting list. Like you could only have 15 people do it because you could make the deal so good for them and good for the school district, but then you wouldn't do it for several years. So I've certainly heard of this before. I just extending the health benefit is something I'm curious about.
When was the last time we did this, Lon?
The last time we did one with a 4-year health benefit was 2011, and I think we had 11 employees participate at that time.
And how many are eligible, potentially eligible under your list now?
I would have to look and see.
Okay, all right, we'll see it on the list then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with this being, there's a resolution for approval on Thursday, correct? Is everyone going to be ready to actually vote on that on Thursday?
I would like to see, being in the insurance industry, the moving target is claims, especially being self-insured. That's a huge question mark. May look good on paper with no claims and using an actuarial figure, but you take excessive claims on the high side out of that, and that'll skew that terribly.
So what do you want to see the information that
I would like
Ron
to
can
see
provide?
I personally would like
Is there anything
to
else
see.
you would want us
No,
to
but I
look
wouldn't
at?
be ready to make a motion.
You're asking for the calculation, same as Renee and I.
Right.
Okay.
But you just want more time to think about it, and
yeah.
I mean, is there any kind of urgency to the vote, or?
With this, we have a time window put into the program for when we make the offering to the employees and when they have to elect to do it. It is locally set. There's no outside guidance or requirement that it has to be offered in a certain period of time. We would just have to alter what we've got for a calendar to do that.
Okay. I would just rather have everyone be comfortable and
Lon,
making an educated decision.
It's a big decision.
Yeah.
Do you know what the age banding is for that lawn?
I believe it's 55 and over, but also eligible for retirement.
And the majority of those, I would guess, would be between the 50 and 55, correct?
No, 55 and over.
Oh, 55 and older. So it'd be 55 to 60 would be typically the...
Usually 55 to 61.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it also plays in there, because they're IPERS covered employees, those that are closer to the rule of 88 would be more likely to take it, and that's part of what she has taken a look at too, is who's going to be in that would be likely to take it. But we'll provide the numbers so that you can see how it plays out.
Okay. 15 is the next one that starts.
Yeah, number 15, I just wanted the council to be aware of it. This is an issue that we've been dealing with for a while, and we have had the staff taking a look into it. We will be bringing back a consolidated report. Public Service has been out there. We actually contracted with an independent third-party company to come in to take a look at the property and see if we could determine what was going on. But based on their feedback, we need to have Building and Fire go in and take a look and see what's going on with the plumbing. But to be honest, what it looks like is there were a lot of alterations made to the plumbing over the years, and it doesn't look like any of it was necessarily inspected or that permits were applied for it. So without having someone trained in that go in and look at it, we can't tell you what code issues may be. I can say that in the opinion of the staff that works with this stuff all the time, they do not think that the issue is being caused by the city, but that it's internal to the property itself.
Okay. Well, it'd be good to get to the bottom of that. Thanks for all the time you're spending on that too, Ryan. Okay. Anything else on the agenda?
I want to ask something before, when they're finished, before you gavel out.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Ryan, you mentioned a couple times we have not formally adopted Robert's rules, and I just have a question. Should we? No. Okay. All right.
All I will say is get a copy of the book, read it for about 15 minutes, and you'll understand why.
No, I trust you. That's good. It came up a couple times, and I'm like, should we? Okay.
I think it's useful as a general guide on how to operate the meeting, but it doesn't quite fit running a city council meeting.
It's generally written for machinations when you're talking about boards or entities that have hundreds of people rather than when you're dealing with a group of 5 or 7. The reason I have a strong opinion on it is I have worked in cities where they have adopted it, and you would be amazed if you ever have factionalization on the city council how much time gets spent finding pieces of parliamentary procedure in that book
Right.
that you can use to delay action or obscure projects.
Strategically, yeah.
You end up spending more time chasing your tail on rules of procedure than you do actually on issues of substance.
I think as a matter of the decorum and general operation of the meeting and those kinds of things, I think it's a good guide to use, for efficiency, to make sure that the meeting runs effectively and efficiently. And I've stressed it in the past, like if we could, all this, nothing should be discussed unless it's on the table as part of a motion. And all discussion should come through the chair, whoever's chairing the meeting, and then they be recognized. It's just, it's so that it promotes the efficient operation of the meeting, so you're not having discussions between people and discussions between people in the audience and all of this stuff that delays a meeting, so that everything runs orderly and efficiently, and everyone gets a chance to speak and to say what they want in an orderly way.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we adjourn? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.